Thanks for joining us here on News Now from Fox. We have a developing live picture for you that we're just going to let you watch and see. This all coming after the January 6th insurrection, in which myself and Andrew Kraft were here watching it all happen. He's going to join me right now for some full coverage on what is going on right now. Officer Sicknick, who was one of the officers who was killed on that day, will lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda. You see that title right there. This is a serious moment for all of those officers, all those Capitol officers who were there on that day. And we're just going to show you guys this entire event in its entirety. Andrew, we've been waiting for this moment for a little while now, and it's coming tonight.
Yeah, Daytona, this is just kind of evidence that, you know, the country, lawmakers are still living in the aftermath of what happened on January 6th. You know, usually these ceremonies are customarily for, you know, famous lawmakers who've passed away, presidents, Supreme Court justices, the like. Remember, just last summer, we were watching the same scenes unfold as the Congressman John Lewis lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda. We also saw Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg after she passed as well. She was the first woman to lie in state. And so Officer Brian Sicknick, here you're seeing some of the Twitter reaction in the run-up to this event tonight. This is from our friends up north, the Canadian Forces, who are here in the United States serving with us. From the New Jersey Air National Guard to Capitol Police, he committed his life to service. He believed in service. He gave his 42 years to service. Honor Officer Brian Sicknick. You know, Daytona, we've been following all of these arrests from those rioters who stormed the Capitol. But since then, it's almost been a month. On February 6th, it'll be a month. We don't have a full view or understanding of any particular individual or group of individuals who are directly responsible for Brian Sicknick's death. No suspect has been arrested in connection solely with his death. And so remember, he wasn't the only Capitol police officer to have died from this event. We brought you the news here on News Now from Fox. 2 other officers right after the event, unfortunately, took their own lives after this terrible, terrible event. And Daytona, remember, after the Capitol riot led to the resignation of the Capitol Police Chief for their failures to secure the Capitol on the 6th, that led to that riotous mob for several hours having free reign of the legislative chamber.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point about these arrests that had been made. It's been somewhat easy for them to locate people who were there and actions that they were making due to all of the reviewed video and photos that have surfaced. So it's an interesting conversation to have that, you know, investigators are struggling to build a federal murder case regarding Officer Sicknick, an officer that committed his life, 42 years to service. So a little background on this. Soon after Sicknick died on January 7th, the following day after the insurrection, prosecutors in Washington opened a federal murder investigation, dedicating a team inside the U.S. Attorney's Office to build out a case. This is what authorities are saying. To date, though, little information has been shared publicly about the circumstances of the death of Sicknick. Obviously, an autopsy is going to be done in this circumstance, and sometimes those take a long period of time. But due to the severity of this situation, I'm sure they're taking their time with releasing details to the public. But it's interesting that not a lot more has come out from this case.
No, Daytona, that's a brilliant point that you make. Remember, most of these people who did this, they streamed themselves online. They posted on Twitter, on Parler, on Instagram of themselves doing this, storming the Capitol. So they were quite easy to find after the fact, posting on Facebook. But to this date, there has really been no full accounting of what happened to Officer Sicknick. There were reports, remember, Daytona, that he possibly was beaten over the head by a fire extinguisher, blunt force trauma. He was a 13-year veteran of the U.S. Capitol Police. The U.S. Capitol Police right now going through lots of changes. Remember, many of those, about 10 to 12 of those police officers were under investigation because initially some thought that there were a few in there who were a little too friendly to the people that came in. They were posing with pictures with them, directing them where to go, kind of like tour guides. We'll see how that investigation comes out. The U.S. Capitol Police Chief had to resign. The House Sergeant of Arms had to resign. The Senate Sergeant of Arms had to resign. So all these people who secure the Capitol are in acting positions right now because of this event. It looks like some of these U.S. Capitol Police officers are getting into formation to greet the casket. But while we're talking about Brian Sicknick, let's also talk about some of the heroes in the U.S. Capitol Police. You'll remember Eugene Goodman, who was captured in that really viral photo, kind of steering the mob in the other direction. If he didn't do that, they could have possibly gotten into the Senate chamber where Mike Pence was, Nancy Pelosi was. We did see him, remember, at inauguration. He was Vice President Kamala Harris's escort with her husband, Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff.
Yeah, so we're just awaiting this event. Like Andrew said, there will definitely be some traditions that will be presented in honor of Officer Sicknick. But there are charges and other assaults on police officers that happened that day. Some of those videos and pictures, appalling, quite honestly. We saw officers being shoved up against the wall. And those are the, sources of evidence that the FBI is utilizing to bring these arrests on citizens who were there across the country. But as a part of the investigation into the riots, prosecutors have charged several with assault against a federal officer stemming from violent episodes at the Capitol, separate from, of course, the assault involving Officer Sicknick. In court documents, FBI agents have laid out elements of the attacks faced by officers in alarming detail. More than 100 police officers injured in that event that night at the Capitol, including at least 15 officers who required hospitalization. That's according to court documents. But I just find this, I find it interesting that these, obviously, events, this live picture that we're looking at, Officer Sicknick is going to be honored inside of the Rotunda, in which that was the location that was breached. So it's almost symbolic at this point in time. It's almost like we're overcoming what happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, since January 6th, Daytona, how many events have we seen in the Rotunda since that happened? Remember, we saw the House impeachment managers present the article of impeachment. They walked through the Rotunda. The very Rotunda where many of those riotous mobbers were taking selfies, standing with the statues there in Statuary Hall, posing for photos. And all the photos and video that we saw that day, they weren't kind to U.S. Capitol Police, that's for sure, or D.C. Metro Police. We saw many of them beating the police officers with American flags. Some of them brought even their own pepper spray and mace to spray in the faces and eyes of U.S. Capitol Police. So I'm being reminded of that truly horrible day, because the Rotunda is supposed to be such a solemn, historic place, and on that day it was frankly desecrated.
So here's a little timeline of what we're looking at for tonight and then into tomorrow as well. He will obviously, his body will arrive at the Capitol tonight for a viewing period for fellow members of his police force. You can see all of them kind of gathered here. That's why we want to stay on this shot, because this is the biggest live story that's happening at this point in time. So we want to respect this event and continue to show it to you. But tomorrow, a congressional tribute is going to be held in the morning. That's according to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and now Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Obviously, because of the pandemic, this ceremony is looking a little bit different than it probably would have before. It's closed to the public. Later in the day tomorrow, Officer Sicknick's body will be taken out of the Capitol and then brought over to Arlington National Cemetery, which is also a tradition and an extremely high honor for someone to be receiving.
Definitely Daytona, just the final resting place of many, many American heroes. Officer Brian Sicknick will join their ranks in Arlington National Cemetery tomorrow, where he'll be buried. I just want to read some of that statement that Pelosi and Schumer put out jointly. They said, quote, "The U.S. Congress is united in grief, gratitude, and solemn appreciation for the service and sacrifice of Officer Brian Sicknick. May this ceremony and the knowledge that so many mourn with and pray for them be a comfort to Officer Sicknick's family during this sad time." So definitely, Daytona, we will be seeing members of Officer Sicknick's family, his friends, his fellow officers that he served with on the U.S. Capitol Police Force for 13 years, hailing from the state of New Jersey, 42 years old when he died. We have some of these tweets that we've found on social media that we want to just cycle through, just some of the reaction we've been getting. We read this one out here. Here's a picture of Brian Sicknick. Then this from Chuck Schumer, the majority leader in the Senate. This evening, Brian Sicknick will lie in honor beneath the Capitol Rotunda. New Jersey native, Air Force National Guard veteran, 12-year member of the Capitol Police. May his memory live forever as a model of service to our nation and courage in the face of danger. Here someone was tweeting, I believe this is a Capitol Hill reporter from somewhere else, but tweeting a picture of the digital condolence book that members can sign for Sicknick, who'll lay in honor in the Capitol Rotunda at 9:30.
And I wanted to show you, but I think they took it out. They actually just rolled it away out of there. So we'll go back to some of the reaction I wanted to cut in if we could. This one coming in from Benny Thompson saying that I offer my condolences to the family of fallen Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. He will truly be remembered for his heroic actions to protect our nation's capital during the insurrection on January 6, 2021. May he rest in honor. And mind you, Sicknick's family has declined to comment on the status of the investigation into the officer's death and has been understandably quiet at this time in general. So here's that photo. You can see the woman in the bottom right-hand corner kind of walking away with it. Just yet another opportunity to honor Officer Sicknick and his years of service. As we wait for this ceremony to kind of pick up pace, I think that it is going to be beginning soon, but we'll just send some of you off to a quick 2-minute commercial break. But when you come back, we'll have, again, full coverage on this event in the Rotunda.